Hello, welcome back to the McKay and Gray weekly comic challenge. There were so many contestants for this week's challenge, oh my goodness. Ursula challenged you to fix the composition on one of our early pages of comics, and you guys really delivered. Stick around because I will be announcing the winner at the end. You will get to see their super cool art, and I will also be announcing the new challenge for next week at the end, so you have to kind of stick around, or I guess jump ahead, whatever, because we have a new challenge, and this is all about giving you guys an opportunity to promote your comics. So please do check out the winner's comic, because liking, sharing this video, and doing all that creates a nice, awesome platform for us to promote y'all's comics, and hopefully that works. Other than that, I'm going to be going one by one through all of these amazing pieces. So let us begin. So first, let me address what I don't like about the original. I find that the original has a lot of flaws that our early art has. It has too many backgrounds going on. It has this aspect where Alicia's thrown to one side, Evan's thrown to the other on the first page. Everything's very crammed on either side of the panel. Each panel, instead of giving things space. The secondary panel is very cramped. It feels not needed to have the witch within that panel. It also tends to direct in a weird direction, flow-wise. We have the leading lines moving us off of the page. I really like the final panel. I don't think it's executed well in terms of like the background and like actually drawing the witch and stuff, but like conceptually I really do like how the bottom panel flows. So that's kind of the issues that I have with the original. I also just find the witch's like continuity to be very confusing, not really intriguing and spooky like she should be, but more like this kind of weird aspect that's hard to follow. And looking at the compositions, I think that a lot of the contestants also struggled with this aspect of like two storylines happening at once within the panels, especially given how like unclear it is. And also the panel amount was hard to work with. So yeah, let's dig into what you guys did. So the first we have is from Kichi Arts, also known as Dream Kaboo, and I really like what they did with the variants in panel weights. We have different sizes, we have like some close-ups, and we have some more like establishing shots. I really like how they managed to create flow from one panel to the next. It's very easy to follow along with each like aspect of the composition into the next. Like it's easy to go from the bubbles to like their faces to Evan like kind of directing us downward. I think I was a little confused about the second panel, I'll be real. I thought it was more pointed up, but I think Evan's pointing his face down, which makes a lot more sense. And I like the third panel, the nice one in the middle. I think that's like a very interesting panel. I like how it makes you pass through the witch and have to actually like interact with her as a visual object. I would say that this one kind of has an aspect where the witch pops in and out, and it's hard to kind of get her story from the page. It feels like the continuity of her movement's a bit strange. I can see that we have the hair kind of directing us from the window, but there's nothing that brings her over to where she is like behind Alicia at the end. So it just creates more confusion with what it's doing. But I really like the flow of this page. The next one we will look at is Triple Fox. So Triple Fox, you did an amazing job at not overdoing your thumbnails. I understand what I'm looking at despite the very like quickly drawn in-ness of it. This one got very columned in how you designed it. This one got very columned in how like they ended up designing it. So we have this big line of blue that goes down, we have a big line of green that goes straight down, and then we have this big line of red that goes straight down. I do like that you put the characters in unique colors because it kind of is a good way to highlight how you are going to end up having this sort of like weighting issue happening. If we were to go ahead with this composition, you would be able to very quickly note that the weights of this page are off. There's also an issue where the bubbles are up at the top in every single panel except for the very last one, so it's just very regimented. It reminds me more of a composition for like a gag strip rather than a more graphic novel narrative type story. I do like what they did with more of like an overlay thing happening here. I think there are some good ideas, but like a lot of work is needed on more like fundamental aspects of the storytelling in the panels. But good work. Thank you for submitting. Next we have Bun. I think the very first thing that I noted with Bun is that you played around with the amount of panels that you were supposed to. So you have an extra little reaction shot. I think it does well for pacing, but I do kind of think it skirts the rules of what the script was giving you guys. I do like it. I like the variance in the pages. I like this close-up in the third panel of Evan. There's some amount of flow. There are some issues. I do find the third panel to be not quite guiding you into the next one. I would say it's also very mid-shotty. We kind of miss out on having like a big, nice opening section. I will also dock points for the fact that you drew all of the little details in the back behind Alicia. What that doing in a thumbnail? Thumbnails, you need to be a lot more simplistic. I know what you were kind of going for, but like we got focus on the composition here, right? And this one has the witch kind of very thrown to one half of the page. Like if you draw a line right down the page, we see the witch is just kind of focused on one side. I will say that it does a better job with the continuity with the witch. You can see her kind of slowly moving into the scene, which I like. And I do like the pulled out panel at the end. I just like a panel with them both in it and having the back and forth. I think that's very good. And I like that the witch is framed in the middle for that one. Next, we have Chyros. So I like what Chyros did. Chyros did keep to the 4 panels. I really like the first 2 panels. I think there's a very strong flow between these 2 panels and leading into the third one. I like the continuity a lot with the witch. So this was definitely up at the top of my list for like contest winners. But I did find that after the witch pulls out in the third panel where the witch starts pulling out, there starts to be like this very halved composition that occurs, which I think could either be fixed with either depth or leaning into a halved motif. Like if you're going to break kind of composition rules, right? If we're going to break a composition rule, like if you're breaking the rule of thirds, if you're having panels or whatever, like you're going to want it to be very intentional. I kind of think of the 9-point page we did that has a front-on picture of the cat and there's description on either sides of it. It's a very intentionally halved panel, and this just doesn't quite feel like intentionally leaning in on the halved portion. And so there's like this really good flow that's happening up at the beginning, but then as we move downward, it becomes kind of flat, very front on, and not as like flowy or like punchy. But I do love the continuity of the witch and the storytelling that's happening here, which is very difficult. The next one we have is from VS. I really like this one starting out with a very strong establishing shot. And there's like a nice variance. We have the nice closer on Evan, and then we can see the third panel where we're looking back at Alicia. The bubbles move pretty nicely through it. I think they are definitely magnetized to the panel borders. Yeah, I don't know if you're noticing that. I would like to give the bubbles a little more space, like bring them inside the composition, whereas right now they're all being pulled to the edges of panels and away from the art. I also find that this is kind of having some of the issues of the original, where we are seeing the witch in the background of like every single shot, and it's just too much background is occurring, and especially with the chaoticness of the background, when I'm thinking about it being fully colored or completed, I think that the background would definitely be too much, where there's definitely space for it to be happening throughout. But yeah, the witch has a very similar weight in every single background. I do really like the movement of seeing her go through the wall, though. I find that kind of interesting. And I do like the narrative being told through these panels. So it is a very good job. The next one I want to look at is by Skate Lewis. So I think this one has like a nice strong opening where we see the witch at the distance, they're talking. It's not as bad as the original where they're like pulled right to the edge. I think they're conflicting a little bit with the window, just with how they're placed. It's kind of boxing them in a way. I'm not sure how you'd fix that. I like the witch coming closer and starting to break the panels, and I like kind of like experimenting with how she's like literally breaking through the panels. She's becoming more of like an eldritch force, which works very well for Pretty Mouth because Pretty Mouth has a lot of that kind of aspect to it. I think that it's really strong, but I would like to see more attention given to the bubbles, and I want to see if like the words actually kind of fit within them, because this one took like the opposite approach where I think the witch kind of became the main focus of the storyline, and I would like to see more of the bubbles given love, because like especially with like the third panel and the second panel, I'm not sure like how all of the words would fit in them and like play nicely with the story playing out here. So next I want to look at Quiet Universe art. Quiet Universe art, I really like the opening page. I like having the very big establishing shot with the hint of the witch in the background. They kept the witch a very subtle kind of background detail that slowly moves into it. They feel kind of squished at the end. This one also has kind of like an issue with the bubbles being very glued to the borders, where I would like to see that open up a lot more, where they do kind of feel tacked on. I do like the flow from one panel to the next. It is very strong. Like the first panel flows into the second does flow into the third. There's like a subtle flowing into the last one, but the bubbles are definitely what held this one back. Otherwise, yeah, this is definitely up at the top of like the list for me. Next we have Cinti. Cinti, I like that you didn't overdo all of the backgrounds and stuff. I like the flow of this. There is a strong understanding of like where we want things to go. We are having an issue where the witch is being thrown to like one side of the composition, on top of Evan also being thrown to one side. I also think that the bubbles don't land on all of the best places, especially in the second and third panels where everything's falling to the bottom. It feels very heavy on that section, but otherwise I do like the flow. I do like what's going on here, and yeah. So next we're looking at Ramsay. So I think the first thing that I definitely noticed was that they added a lot more panels, which makes sense because that is definitely how I would fix this section of Pretty Mouth. But within the script that we're given, 4 panels kind of was what we were going for, right? I also find that this is a lot more of a webtoon style of page, where each panel is very strong on its own and forms kind of like this storyboard type animation type feel where you're scrolling rather than meant to take the whole page in at once, especially because like each page has its own weight to it. But yeah, it was broken up into like a lot of pages or panels. Otherwise, I think it would be very strong as a contender, but it was just too many panels. Yeah, that was the main issue. It's just too many panels. Looking at each of the compositions, though, they are very strong. And a big difficulty with this page is that there's two kind of stories playing out at once, and you only have 4 panels. But it is very strong. The next one we have is from Rat. I like this one. I like the opening page rather than being an establishing shot of the grocery store. We're kind of like establishing all of the characters. We have the witch in the background. I like how it's framed. I like the flow. I think that they leaned a little too much on having too many backgrounds in it. We're seeing the witch very repeatedly, which I feel kind of blunts her appearance. And we're also having this issue with the bubbles being very magnetized to the corners. They're also, after the first 2 panels, I find that the flow kind of falls off. It's not helped with the bubbles. But yeah, that would be my assessment of these panels, this page. Next we have Chowder. My goodness. Amazing. I love the soup. The soup. This is our mod, okay? This is Chowder. He's doing a meme. It's a very good meme. Made me laugh. Too many panels though, disqualified. Then we have Snuffy. So Snuffy, I think that there's a lot of pulling from one side and the other that's happening. We're having very much Alicia pulled off to one corner, Evan's pulled off to the other. I think there's a way to bring that composition closer together. There's another issue with the magnetized bubbles. They really just are drawn to these gutters in a lot of these compositions, I'm finding, whereas I want them to be part of the story. And again, this one has a lot of the witch repeating in the background. I like the storytelling between Alicia and Evan in this. It gets a little confusing when Evan is shoving past her in the second panel, but other than that, I think it's mostly everything being drawn and pulled to the gutters. That was the issue with this one. Next we have Achilles. I really liked what you did here, Achilles. This was another one where the witch kind of became this overwhelming presence on the page. I think that there's a good variance in panels, different angles. The flow of it was a little flat, I find, but I really did like the storytelling of the witch. It didn't become this very repetitive image. Rather, it was a progressive story that's happening throughout the page, which I like. But I would like to see a little more with the flow of the pages. And there is some aspects to the bubbles kind of being flat, I guess. But otherwise, it was very strong and very high in the rankings. Next, we have Candy Gnome. Candy Gnome also added a panel, though in this case, I wasn't sure why we needed that the first panel, because if we do look at the original, which, you might not have, page before this does establish the outside of the cafe. I don't know if it establishes the witch. I would have liked to just see the full breadth of the cafe that they're working in. They're in a cafe now too. That's okay. That was in the script. You didn't know. They're at a grocery store in their original. It's fine. I understand not knowing what was going on in the backgrounds of the page. You were doing your best. But yeah, I like the storytelling of the panels. I like the more pulled out shots at the beginning and then moving closer in. I also like this panel where you see them from behind. There's a bit of an issue where stuff is being pulled to the side, especially in that third panel where Alicia and the bubble become very glued to the side. I think that, as a side note, I get very particular about things being pulled to the side because when I am looking at other people's comics, a lot of the times I'm doing it for anthologies that I'm doing. And when you're doing an anthology and when you're printing books, you want to be very careful about those sides because that's where stuff is going to either get shoved into the spine of a book or it's going to get cut off by the trim. So you got to be very careful with the sides. On top of it being kind of not the best compositionally. You need to be a little more afraid of the sides of your comic, because that's where things get eaten up by the spine. And ideally you'd be aware of like what side is going into spine and which is going into trim, because the spine is more dangerous than the trim half of the time. Anyways, I'm digressing. I do like it. I think it needs a little more strength in the flow department, and the last 3 bubbles are all kind of magnetized together. There's also a lot of background in each, and because they're so complicated backgrounds, I feel like it does get very chaotic, is what I found. And the second to last one I would like to look at is Herroki. I really liked this one. I think it's very strong. Again, more panels than were needed. I really like that they didn't over-render all of the characters. You can understand what's going on, even with there being like stick figures. I like the story that's being told with the witch slowly coming into the story. I think the very last panel is very strong. I would just really like to see those first 2 panels just become one panel. There's a little bit of an issue with the 3rd panel and the bubble being tucked into the corner. I'd also want to know if the words are actually fitting in these, because there is, that will play a big role in something like this, how big the bubbles are, and I'm not sure these would be big enough for the story that is told in them. Also, the little tie is getting kind of stuck in the corner. But otherwise, like, I feel this was a very strong one. So my number one I liked the best was Tadpole art. So I really liked the flow of this page. I liked the big establishing shot that has both of the characters in it, as well as the witch in the background being very small. I like that things didn't go overboard with the witch, where she didn't become this huge force, though that's kind of my fault for not fully articulating that. Like, I didn't want the witch to become the main focus. I think what I really liked about this page was that both stories were balanced very nicely. So we have the background story of the witch growing closer and moving into the plot, as well as having the focus on these 2 characters, where like they don't feel like they're competing stories. They feel like they're parallel stories that are moving closer together. So I just really liked how that came across. I like that there wasn't an overuse of backgrounds that happened. There's a good variance of shots. As well, the bubbles flow incredibly nicely. They're given nice space. They're given focus. I think it was just a very difficult page to pull off. So being able to balance both like the bubbles, the background story occurring, as well as the foreground story of Alicia and Evan talking together about like what's going on in his life. Like, I think that is just incredibly strong, and I really like what was done with it. So thank you for all the contestants, but I think it's time to talk about Tadpole Punch. So you guys all need to go check out Tadpole Punch's comic. They recently started posting it. It's called Phantasmic. It's a silly Ghost of the Week type story. The first issue is 48 pages long, which is the longest comic they have ever made so far. So please check it out. They did an amazing job on the contest. So I'm certain they have some amazing stuff for you to see. So go, please check it out. All right, for the next week, if you would like to become the winner and have your comic promoted on the challenge, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video. The better it does, the better for all of us, because, it's hard to find opportunities, right, to share your comics. But if you would like to join the contest, your challenge this week is to redesign our character, Robert the Extraordinary. She's a contortionist character, she's bright-eyed, she is the #1 Zoltar fangirl, she loves the amazing Zoltar, she grew up at a circus, and now she performs on the street doing contortionist things. She's just very positive, very cute, bubbly, and she has rainbow socks, okay? She has these big, long rainbow stockings that were like an incredibly important aspect of her character, but Ursula got rid of them because it was too much to draw. So I want a character that has rainbow stockings and a cute little contortionist outfit. I want it to still be balanced. You know, like, it's hard to incorporate rainbow into a character. Try not to make her overly complicated because she is a comic character and she needs to be drawn repeatedly, while also having to force the hypothetical artist to redraw these socks all the time. So you might not want to bring rainbow into every aspect of the outfit because that would be nonsense. So figure that out for me, please. I'll be excited to see it, and Ursula will be judging all of them. So thank you so much for watching. Again, I need you to go check out Phantasmic by Tadpole Punch because they did an amazing job and I would like to reward it. And again, sharing these videos really helps because there's not always great places to promote your comics. So thank you again. And if you liked any of the art, there are links to all of the artists below. So please check any of them out if their style appealed to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.